and welcome to the Solve Network. My name is Shane Borza, and I'll be your host. Along with my co-founder, Benjamin Goss, we'd like to welcome you. Our mission is to provide solutions and create a network of experts for you to learn from. Now, this show is a little different than most podcasts, as it is actually a live call held twice a month. If you can, please join us on the first and third Thursday of each month so you can get your questions answered live and direct from the experts themselves. If you're an expert, please contact me at shaneborza.com so you can be a part of the network. And now, here's our show.
Scene one, Apple, take one.
Hi, I'm Shane Borza, your content creator coach. I have 2 books on filmmaking, Film Notes, where you learn to write, direct, and produce, and the Film Notes Workbook, where you can learn checklists and paperwork to streamline creating your content. Available at shaneborza.com. I also have filmmaker resources like the Paperwork Bundle with over 300 documents, the Sound Effects Bundle with almost 3,000 files, and the Music Bundle featuring 900 tracks of all genres. Want to build your professional credits? Become an associate producer and get listed on IMDb. Let me help you get your art out into the world.
Scene one, Apple, take one.
Before I launch into any questions, I'd love to open it up to other people on the call and see if anybody else has any either question, comments, or anything else they'd like to ask directly to Kelsey. Okay, I see some questions in the chat, so I'm going to start asking some of those. And then if anybody has anything, just kind of cue me or what have you, and I'm happy to have you step in. You mentioned the neuroplasticity earlier, and I think you mentioned a law on that. Whose law? Mm-hmm. What was that you were talking about with the neuroplasticity?
Good call. Hebb's law, Hebb''s, well, Hebb's law, and it is that whatever fires together, wires together. And that's with anything, that kind of synaptic synapses with our neurons, that the more often that they fire together, the more likely, the stronger that connection gets, which is also really great news. While we can't completely destroy any pathways that we've created, we can prune it away. So I'm currently, just for reference, I'm currently in Mexico. I've had 4 years of Spanish through high school, I guess 5 years if you include college, but I wasn't using it. And it's not that you completely lose it, but it gets really, really rusty. But the more often you use it, the more often that you practice it, the more likely you are for those synapses to wire together, and it'll become easier and easier.
Can you talk about micro achievements versus macro goals? You'd mentioned some of those kind of small victories. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. It kind of depends on the person, but I think it's exciting to have big goals. And in no way do I want anyone to feel like, they can't dream big or whatever else. But I like to think of it. So I usually I have lived a long time in Colorado, and we have a whole bunch of 14ers, right? These 14,000 foot mountains. And there's something and I love hiking them, but every time I look up at the top of a 14er or any mountain for that point, it's daunting, right? It's overwhelming. And honestly, if I were to continue to just look at the tip of the mountain, I'm going to fall on my face, right? So either A, I won't even start because it's too big, I'm too overwhelmed, or B, I'm just not looking in the right spot. So it's really important for us to remember that it's good to have a trajectory, but recognize that we need to focus on the little micro steps that are going to get us there. So many of the things that I talk about with my clients that we celebrate, right? We deeply celebrate, just mindful eating. So say that if you were to eat a majority of your meals on a plate, that's a win. That's a really big win, because how many of us mindlessly eat out from containers, from bags, and then we end up overeating? Another huge win is just eating without distraction. eating without their cell phone or watching television or whatever else, and actually just sitting and just eating. It could be waking up and drinking water, just drinking more water throughout the day. While these things are small, like, they are huge. And when repeated over and over and over again, they are, each little thing like that is casting a vote for the type of person you want to be. So yes, maybe you want to get to a point that you're running a marathon, but let's first at least start with like a 10 or 15 minute walk after dinner. And then you progress it just a little bit more each time. But yeah, I think one of the things that I really loved, again, in Atomic Habits, he talks about the 2-minute rule. And if you have a goal, but you're getting nowhere on it, or if you're not actually practicing it, it may be that it's not simple enough. BJ Fogg, he's a Stanford professor. He talks about this as well. And I think has a book called Tiny Habits. And again, like, if it's too big, you won't do it. But if you have something that's less than 2 minutes, like if you can just meditate for 2 minutes, or if you can maybe, like BJ Fogg talks about doing a push-up every time he, like, doing like 5 push-ups after he went to the bathroom, or if you can just floss one tooth, if you can make it so that the accomplishment is so, it's just so easy. Like, of course I can do that. Like, it's so easy that there's no way you're not going to do it. And then once you get into the habit of doing it, that small thing, then you can start progressing it from there. But it's really about scaling it back to a place that you'll actually do it.
Great answer. And it's funny, I started smiling because I was picturing, oh yeah, just start with a short walk and then eventually you'll do a marathon after dinner.
That's a very good point. I don't know.
I'm sure somewhere someone's done that.
I'm sure. Those people are crazier than I am.
So I have a question here. Is it possible for someone to be either physically or medically prevented from executing a plan, even though they've like successfully designed the environment for the plan to work?
I think it's absolutely, I mean, the whole point of a plan, I guess for me, I am not a proponent of like a structured meal plan or a diet or a structured, in the sense that it's, the whole thing is I don't know your body like you do, and you don't know my body like I do. Now, obviously we can have some goals and some certain things, but I mean, and if you have certain medical issues, like that's totally, like, the whole point of intuitive eating is to listen to your body and to ask yourself, how do I want to feel? How can I best nourish and satisfy my body right now? And so, and they're definitely, like, you can set your environment. Now, one thing with the whole redesigning your environment, I will kind of point out. So a lot of people who struggle with binge eating, their go-to is to just not buy the food. Like, just, I won't buy the food. I won't let it in the house. I won't do, like, cause if I let it in the house, then I'm going to have to eat it all. And that was totally me. And that's where I would kind of talk about redesigning the way you think about food. I highly recommend the book Intuitive Eating. It changed my life. And one of the concepts they talk about was making peace with food, especially with the holidays, because the more that you make a food forbidden, or as I used to call them, no stop foods, or the more you kind of tell yourself, I can't have this thing, the more you're going to think about it, the more you're going to want it, the more you're going to crave it. And so when I say redesign in that sense, I don't mean that it can't be in the house or you can't ever have it again. But I do think there's not really a reason for it to be like right in the most obvious, like right in front of you all the time. Like, that's not really like for any sort of habit. If you want a habit, a good habit to start, you want to make it as easy, obvious, and convenient. If you want to make another habit hard, or if you want to stop a bad habit, you need to add friction. And so you can be that, like social media, if you're struggling with social media, delete the apps from your phone. That adds some friction. If you are tired, if watching television is an issue, hide the remote. If, eating certain foods, maybe just, it's not that you can't have them, but just make it a little bit more difficult. So you have to think about it. Or in my program, we have an app where you take a picture of your food before eating, just because it adds a little friction, a little bit more, it makes you a little bit more conscious before choosing to eat.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that those little things are nice opportunities to pause and reflect.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you that beat, like you were mentioning earlier, just take 2 minutes to meditate, it's like, oh, well, what would that do in your day? It's just a few minutes, but it gives you a chance to reframe. And same thing, if you sit down to eat without thinking about it, you might not consciously recognize like, oh, is this going to serve me? But if you're going to take a picture, you're literally looking at it through a lens. Yeah, that's a great idea. So this is a question about kind of where to start. So are there any studies that could help someone understand where to focus first? I feel like trying to structure my physical eating environment with my social friend environment and my informational like media environment is a lot to deal with.
Yes. No, I think the big thing there is just recognizing you have to choose just one, or it has to be so simple. And more than anything, choose the one that's most important to you right now. I try, this is something that I struggle with. I want to do all the things. I want to practice my Spanish, and I want to do more with my nutrition certifications, and I want to do more with my entrepreneurial business, and I want to do YouTube, and I want to do all the things. Right. But there's no way, again, if you get into that all or nothing where I'm going to overhaul my life and do all the things, it just won't work. So find something that really works for you. And one thing I will say that I do think, in all honesty, has changed my entire life and anyone else that I've come by. If you can first, however you want to start your morning, however you want to start your day, really, and it can be so tiny, but I want you to think about how many of us start our day and within 1 minute we're looking at our phone and we go from sleep and then we're just pulling in all this stress, all this anxiety, all this comparison. If you can take even 5-15 minutes, I don't care what it is you're doing. If you can take time to feel gratitude, if you can take time to just maybe visualize how you want your day to go. If you can just take a moment to meditate, take a moment to journal, affirmations, whatever it is, but let it be yours. I will absolutely, if you can take 5 to 15 minutes before anything in your day to carve out, to know that you've given it to yourself, it'll change your life. And you'll be much more intentional throughout the rest of your day. The other things will come on with time, but I would definitely prioritize that time. It's so precious.
Yeah, that's an amazing message and very powerful. So this is a similar question about the kind of not knowing where to start, but about a different aspect. So are there any misconceptions about what is healthy and what isn't? How do you know if dairy is good or bad? How do you know if fat is good or bad? How do you know, for example, if carnivore or vegan is good or bad?
I love this. This was me. I was a professional, right? I've been a personal trainer for over 10 years and I kept doing the same thing. I was so confused. What am I supposed to be intermittent fasting? And I've done them all. I've done them all. I've done the paleo. I've done Whole30. I've done keto. I've done the intermittent fasting. I've done them all. And here's the answer. There is no good or bad food. There is no healthy or unhealthy food. The more we label foods, the more, again, it becomes forbidden, special, and you'll end up craving it because I told you can't have it. I'll never tell my clients that they can't have something. And so I'll answer that in the sense that I firmly believe that it is far less important about what we eat and far more important for us to think about why and how we are eating. Why are you eating? Are you eating because you're bored, because you're stressed, because whatever? Are you eating, or are you eating to nourish, to love, to satisfy? Also notice food is an amazing experience. We're about to have the holidays, and I don't know about you, but I absolutely love my mom's homemade cooking. And so for me, why am I eating this food? Whether it's healthy or unhealthy, quote unquote, I'm eating this for the experience. I'm eating this for the memory. I'm eating to enjoy. I'm in Mexico. You don't think I'm not going to have some like amazing, like authentic food and tequila? Like, yes. But like, again, it's why and how. So be careful with the holidays that you don't get into this FOMO. Just because there's no good or bad food doesn't mean you need to have this fear of missing out. And so really ask and check in with yourself. Why am I eating this? And then check in, how am I eating this? Am I eating this slowly? Am I smelling the food? Am I chewing and getting the texture? Is it crunchy? Is it soft? Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Is it spicy? What does it taste like? What are my memories? Am I letting my mouth water? Am I really chewing every single bite? Am I just enjoying the company that I'm with? Food is an experience so much more. And I promise you that if you just slow down and if you eat mindfully, you are far more likely to be satisfied with less. And you'll actually be satisfied and not feel any guilt or shame because you did so consciously.
You are preaching tonight. It's so great. Yeah, I think this is, like you mentioned, it's about transforming the self from the inside so that you can then look at these things differently as opposed to making these strict rules that you have to memorize and measure and all that stuff. That's not sustainable. So that's great. Next question is, if you could recommend, do these three things first and worry about everything else once you've got those down, what would you tell someone that those like initial 3 steps would be? I'll kind of give you a little highlight of what the 5-day challenge will kind of go over. So I tend to say there's 4. I have 4 foundational habits, and I go deep dive into how to implement those more during the challenge. But just as kind of an overview, water. Do not underestimate water. Start your day with water. It's huge. Exactly. And literally just the first thing, I always have water on my nightstand. Love it, Kari. Start your day with water. If you can, have water throughout the day. I promise you, it's amazing for your skin, for your digestion. It can help with appetite control. It's a natural energizer because it actually generates new red blood cells. So there's more oxygen throughout your body. Water is amazing. Number 2, steps. So the biggest thing, I get so many people, especially they're like, what workout do I need to do? Do I need to do HIIT training? Do I need to do, how much are you moving in general? So in our metabolism, there's this thing called NEAT, which stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And it is actually the majority of our metabolism. Not the majority. Well, the majority of our metabolism is our resting metabolism, right? Which could possibly be impacted by having more muscle on your body. But second to that is NEAT. And all NEAT is when you choose to park further away from the grocery store, or when you choose to take the stairs rather than the escalator, or when you choose to just go for a 10-minute walk after dinner rather than just sitting on the couch.
It's you just being it's me talking right now. It's me like using my hands and being whatever. So that, those people who feel like you're like, man, they have a really fast metabolism. More often than not, they're really fidgety. More often than not, they're just moving their body unconsciously. And sometimes what happens is if we over exercise or do these high intensity exercises, we end up compensating because we're exhausted the rest of the day. We just don't move our body at all because we're exhausted. Or if you're overly restricting your calories, you're exhausted because your body's trying to like preserve energy. So just be more active, get steps. If you can, and like, it's up to you. It's arbitrary. If you're only getting 2,000 steps in a day, let's aim for 3. If you're getting 5,000, let's aim for 7. If you're getting 8, let's aim for, just kind of like bump up and progress. So water, steps, gratitude. And I would say gratitude is actually my biggest, hands down, 100%. That one habit will change your freaking life. I promise. If you can wake up in the morning and instead of being like, oh my God, I got to go to work. If the first thing you can think when you wake up is like, thank God I have another day, or thank you. I have another day. There's another opportunity. Thank you that I have parents. Thank you that I have friends. Thank you that I have a job, or thank you that I have clean water. I have food. I have eyes that can see. I have legs that can walk. Thank you. Really feel gratitude. So often, like I said, where focus goes, energy flows, results show. And if your focus is on your cellulite or all your rolls or all your wrinkles, that's all you're going to see. But if you can put on the glasses, if you can put on the gratitude lens, and instead of picking at everything that you don't like, if you can instead be grateful and appreciative that you have a heart that pumps, you have eyes that see, you have a stomach that digests food, and absorbs nutrients. You have all these things going for you. Appreciate it. And when you appreciate something, you take care of it, because what you appreciate appreciates. And then I guess the last one that I talk about is that mindful eating. And that's where really just how are you eating and being conscious of that. So yes, water, steps, gratitude, mindful eating. I'm pretty sure Tony Robbins said focus, energy flows. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and I think there was a third part where focus goes, energy flows. What was
results show?
Results show. Got it. Cool. Okay.
It's a big deal. We focus way too much on the negative. Focus on what you want to see more of.
Someone's saying, you mentioned you typically work only with women. Is it because you feel that men and women are different, or is there another reason?
Okay, so I've been doing a little bit of an identity. So I've worked with both, and I absolutely love working with men. And this boot camp is open to men. This boot camp is open to anybody. It's not just women. The reason I tend to work with women is I find that talking about binge eating is embarrassing for some people, or not that everyone labels themselves as a binge eater, but they don't want to talk about the fact that they struggle with food, or they'll overeat and, or feel out of control, or maybe obsessively. And so I think just working with women gives them that safety, it kind of feels a little safer for them to be able to talk about it in my community. That being said, I do really enjoy working with men. I think I've kind of gotten away from it from when I started going online, because I started it got a little creepy. Nothing against men. I just, but at this boot camp is open to everybody. They are just general healthy habits. And, I think no matter what, and I know men struggle with binge eating and eating disorders as well. I absolutely know that. And honestly, possibly not more so, but in the sense that like, they hardly have a safe place to talk about it, because they don't talk about it, because it's just like taboo, especially for men. But and they think it's a lot of people think that eating disorders or disordered eating is just because it's an aesthetics or just like women feel like they need to look a certain way. But a lot of times it's a control issue, especially people who struggle with binge eating. They tend to be perfectionists. They tend to be high performers, very driven. And they'll have every other aspect of their life put together except this one area. And that's definitely because even anorexia, it's a control thing. And a lot of times people who struggle with binge eating, they were previously struggling with anorexia. A lot of anorexics then become binge eaters. And a lot of that's because it's a survival mechanism. The body just ends up being like, dude, we need some effing food. And then it becomes a habit, right? That kind of, just whatever reaction. So, yes. So I do work with both. This boot camp's open for both. But right now, my Wiebe Warriors has just been women.
So this is a kind of a two questions in one. What's your biggest challenge as a health coach working with your clients? And how do you predict the current pandemic is going to affect people's habits?
Ooh, these are good questions, people. Okay. So as a biggest challenge as a health coach, I think for me, and actually it's one of my favorite things, but I would say it's a challenge, but once they get it, that aha, it's so satisfying. It's when they finally recognize that their health issues or their struggles with food or their weight has really nothing to do with their diet, has really nothing to do with the external at all. And it has everything to do with how they feel about themselves. It has everything to do with the stories that they tell themselves, whether they feel like they're broken, whether they feel like, again, I've seen it again and again. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not deserving of that. I don't deserve that because ABC. Like, I don't look a certain way. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not whatever. And when we can finally get into this place of I am enough, when you can really feel that and believe I am enough right now, just as I am, that's life-changing. And that, for me, it takes a while. It takes that repetition. But once they get it, so satisfying. And then as far as this pandemic, there's a lot of things. Unfortunately, this pandemic breeds a lot of loneliness. And loneliness is an uncomfortable feeling. And again, when we feel uncomfortable, we reach for things to fill that void, right? It's that whole thing again, I don't feel enough. So we're always looking for distraction, whether that be with work or with, it could be pornography, it could be shopping, it could be social media, it could be alcohol, it could be food, whatever it is. We're looking for something to fill that void, to distract, to feel better. And the other thing that I think this pandemic has definitely done is it's kind of, two things. One, now a lot of people are at home and they're like, that was something I was dealing with for a year before this pandemic. When I first started working from home, anytime I'd feel anxious or overwhelmed, well, the pantry's right there. You know, it's not the same as like at work. And all of a sudden that becomes your new habit. That becomes like your routine. And all of a sudden, like, why am I always reaching for food? And it's because you never recognized what the triggers were. That, and then the other thing with the pandemic is, and I really want people to watch out for this. We kind of get this victim mentality, this like kind of giving ourselves an excuse. Oh, well, 2020. Oh, the pandemic. Oh, well, you know, like, and I'm not saying that there aren't some things, but you know, and I understand, and all of your feelings are absolutely valid. In no way am I saying that they're not, but at the end of the day, this is still your one life. And I want you to have a quality life. I want you to have a life where you feel amazing and at your best. And you deserve more than just saying, well, I'm just going to write this year off. I'm just going to write this time off. Whatever. No one cares anyway.
Yeah, again, it's the presence and the intention that you've mentioned before. And you're right, there's a lot of people, and I think that is this cycle as well, because, you'll see things on social media where everyone will say like, oh, the pandemic 15. And so then people go, oh, well, that's happening, so it's fine, So, yeah, cut that stuff out.
Exactly. Like, stop. Yeah. Don't put your focus there. It doesn't have to be. Now you have more time than ever, and you get to choose. You have the power to choose how you use that time. And if you're struggling with it, then I highly encourage you to find a community or to find a coach or find something that's going to help hold you accountable and help bring you up to the standard that you are worth having.
So I have a couple of last ones. And as a reminder, anyone else on the call, feel free to jump in if you have a question or comment you'd like to run past Kelsey. So this next one is there such a thing as a common piece of kryptonite for people who want to be more intentional in their food and habits? Or is this as varied as the people you work with? If it's common, is there a top 3, top 5, top 10, something like that, like list of things to avoid or something like that to help set people up for success?
Kryptonite, it does kind of depend. I would say most common would be sugar. Other things, honestly, and I've seen this especially with binge eaters, peanut butter. Peanut butter is a huge kryptonite for people. It's really easy to eat really quickly, and it's really calorically dense. It's also, depending on it's maybe more healthier things, sugary cereal, granola, let's see, other just ice cream, things like that. What I encourage you though, even though there's a lot of these similarities, it's all in the way you think about it. First, I know a lot of people say, well, there's this sugar addiction and all this processed food, and they're making it really highly palatable and we can't do anything about it. I'm and I understand that, but if you're still eating slowly and really eating consciously and putting the cookie on a plate and, making it an experience, I promise you'll eat less. But so one thing is this self-fulfilling prophecy. Be very conscious of your language. So I used to I would say well, whenever I eat peanut butter, I always overeat it. Whenever I have a cookie, whenever they bring chips out on the table, I always eat all the chips. Whenever, it's up to you, to recognize that language and switch it to say, I used to struggle with this. I used to struggle with this, and make that your new pattern. The other thing the big reason why we struggle with these things, 2 big reasons. Number one, they're highly palatable, and that makes sense from a survival mechanism, right? So if we've been dieting, if we've been really restrictive with our calories or with our foods, our body wants energy, especially if you've been really restrictive with your calories. I don't know why women get in this idea, I need to only have 1,200 calories. By the way, 1,200 calories is what a 3 and a 4-year-old need to survive. You deserve more calories than a 3 and a 4-year-old. Let's just put that there. So when we over-restrict our calories, we end up overcompensating. Our body ends up feeling the survival mechanism. And so, of course, when it wants to survive, it's going to reach for the thing that's going to give it the most energy the fastest, right? And glucose, anything sugary like that, it's going to release energy really, really quickly. So that's partly why we reach for those things. The other reason is because we've labeled them as unhealthy. We've labeled them as forbidden. We've labeled them as bad foods. And then whenever I tell, it's so let's see, all we wanted was to Netflix and chill, right? Until you were told for months that all you could do was Netflix and chill, right? So whenever you're told you can't have something or you can't do something, it's the human condition. You feel deprived and you're gonna want it more. So stop putting these labels on those foods and just really ask yourself if you actually want it. Give yourself unconditional permission. And like, so then you can go out for pizza, and here's the best part. If you don't eat it all, guess what? You can totally take it home and you can have another slice tomorrow or later. You're an adult. You can totally have it. You're not a bad person for having it, but you may ask yourself, like, do you really even want it? But yeah, that's the whole problem when we get into this FOMO, like, well, I'm eating out, so I might as well eat it all right now because I'm going to go back on my diet tomorrow. It makes no sense. You'll overeat, you'll feel bad, you'll over-restrict, and it's that pendulum.
I think that pendulum example is really good. It's such a great way to frame it in a way that I think everyone can, it's so easy to see or imagine a pendulum like swinging back and forth, and you're like, oh, right, I think usually I hear people address it as like yo-yo dieting.
Yes.
But to me, the pendulum strikes so much more clearly. So yeah, that's a great like visual example, I guess, or our minds, can picture that, I think, so much more. So you started to get into this a little bit in the last answer when you were talking about kind of all of these triggers and how we overcompensate, but the next question is a little long, but I'll just kind of overview it. What would you say to someone who feels kind of assaulted by the social media? They're overwhelmed with Corona, all the political stuff that's going on right now, and it, is leaving people, like you mentioned earlier, like feeling alone, feeling kind of abandoned, and how it could lead them to, being stuck at home with your family. There's a lot of buttons there, there's a lot of overwhelm there, there's a lot of bickering and things that can happen as well. And so you can kind of go into yourself and get depressed, and then some of these things can kick off, like binging or starving or whatever it is. So is there kind of just an overall message that you would give to people if they're starting to feel that they're like falling into that?
Yeah. Again, everything is really valid. I think that that's really important. And sometimes that's one of the biggest things I do as a life coach is listen. Sometimes we just need to feel heard. We need to feel understood. We need to feel validated. LUV. Listened to, understood, validated. Love. We need to feel loved. Also from there, I personally, I know there's a lot going on politically. I know there's a lot going on with, I know it, but I want you to, and I know it can be good to be informed. At the same time, I would highly recommend you turn it off. Again, where you're putting your energy, that's what you're going to see more of. We have this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system, so the RAS. And whenever you buy a car and then you see that car everywhere, it's not that car wasn't always there. It's just that we have billions of bits of information coming at us all the time. And the only way that we can function is by our brain prioritizing what's actually important to us. And so the more that you focus on these things, the more you're going to see of it. And so it's the same thing for me when I'm focusing on all the things I'm grateful for, all the things I'm appreciating, all the things that are actually really going well in my life. If I keep putting that out there and tell my brain that's what I want to keep seeing more of, that's what I'm going to keep seeing more of. And again, it's an echo chamber. I'm so serious when I talk about curating your social media or just getting off of it for a little bit, taking a little break, but be conscious. If there is something that is bringing you down, not making you feel good, unfollow it, unsubscribe. There's no reason for you to take on and consume that information if it's pulling you down. And honestly, I haven't watched the news in ages. somehow I'm still functioning and I kind of know what's going on in the world, people will let you know. So if it's pulling you down, your health and your mental well-being is worth far more. And as far as like staying in the house and because that is a big one. If you're not feeling safe in your own home, that's an environment, right? So I would encourage you, are there ways that you can find safe spaces? Can you find a safe space in your car? Can you find a safe space going for a walk? Do you have a place in your room? Something that is going to be grounding. Finding times to journal it, actually write it out is so healing. Find someone to talk to who will listen. And I really am a huge person for stoicism. So if you ever want to read up on stoicism, or Ryan Holiday has some stuff, or Tim Ferriss talks about it too. But it is this idea that like you can have these feelings, but you really get to choose how you react. I think Viktor Frankl talks about it in Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a psychologist who had survived Auschwitz, and how like, at the end of the day, the one thing that no one can take from you is how you choose to react to something. And I know how hard that can feel. I used to struggle with anxiety. I was this person, I was on anti-anxiety meds, Ativan. There was a time like I was on a plane and I ended up having to be put in an ambulance on the tarmac because I was having a panic attack. And I couldn't function. And I was having all these physical manifestations of stress. I understand how overwhelming and how big it can feel. But the more that you can understand that you do have control over your reactions, that you get to choose how you want to feel, it's slow, but the more you practice that and understand that, the stronger you get.
By the way, good book recommendations. I've gotten 3 or 4 of you throughout the talk here, which they're all really good. And to piggyback on that, so I'm a big fan of the Daily Stoic, and they have both an email series and a podcast series. So if people want to read stuff or listen to stuff, and they go together, so you can do both, but both are great. The emails and the podcasts are both fairly short. Usually the audio is only 5 minutes or less. On the weekends, they might have an interview with someone that's longer, like an hour, but it gives you this nice little way to kind of frame your day. And so what I like to do is I'll get up in the morning, and as I'm going for kind of my warm up, I will listen to one of those. And then after a few minutes, I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm ready to train, do the whole day, and everything is framed within the little mini lesson. So if anyone is interested in that, yes, all of those recommendations that Kelsey just said are fantastic.
That's an awesome tip. Thank you for that.
So I have one last question, but I'd love to open it up and see, since I've been asking all the chat questions, if anyone else has anything they'd like to ask or comment on before we start to wrap up. All right, so I'll ask this last one. In your professional experience, are fitness trackers such as apps, Fitbit, etc., effective, or are they just an expensive fad?
These are fun questions. I love everyone who's asking, like, put way into it. Okay, so a little bit about like fitness trackers. As far as calories go, it's really off usually by about like 20%. And just so we're clear, with calories on any sort of packaged good, they can be off by about 20% as well. I'm not a huge person. Like, I do understand, I kind of go back and forth as far as like tracking your calories. If you can do so from a data standpoint, if you can do so just for curiosity, if you've never done it before and you're just kind of curious overall, how many calories are you having? Go for it. I think that it's good information to have. Just don't get obsessive. You know what I mean? There's a really try as best as you can that, like, if you go over calories, you're not a failure again, right? That's that all or nothing mentality. And there's nothing about that. For me personally, I do have my clients use an app. It does not count calories. It does not count macros. All it is it takes a picture of your food And then you get to comment on why you're eating. Like, are you bored? Are you tired? Are you stressed? Are you hungry? Is this social? You get to comment how it makes you feel. Are you satisfied? Are you guilty? Are you unsatisfied? Are you happy? Where are you eating? Are you eating in the car, in bed, on the couch, at the table? Are you standing? Who are you eating with? By yourself, with family, with friends, with coworkers? And then if you are one of my clients, there's a premium version, so you can also record just, if you went for a walk or what kind of activity you're doing throughout the day, just so you have notice of it. You can track your caffeine intake, you can track your water, you can track your alcohol intake. Just again, because everything's about awareness. Everything's about recognizing why are you eating. It also comments so you can see how long you go between meals. So are you eating every hour? Why? Or are you eating when I started doing this, I realized, every about 3 to 4 hours, I get hungry. Oh, okay. That's what hunger feels like. And I'm also able to see how long are my meals taking? Am I eating in less than 5 minutes, or is it taking me 15 to 20 minutes? That app, if you're interested, I absolutely love it, hands down. It's called the 8 app, 8, A-T-E. And they have a newsletter and everything. It's all about mindful eating. And again, the premium version, I think is like $30 a month, but the free version is pretty awesome as well. MyFitnessPal, you can totally check it out. Just be very careful that you're not overdoing it. And then tracking your calories and as far as just don't take it seriously. I think way too many people try and I ate this, so now I need to do this exercise. And actually that amount of physical activity, it only accounts for only up to 5 to 10% of our overall metabolism. So it's far more important that you just be just an active person in general, just be more active throughout the day. As far as counting steps, most of us carry our cell phone with us, and that's counting your steps anyway. So fad, does it make you more aware? Is it kind of fun? Great. If you get obsessive, cut it out.
Yeah, good recommendations. And I just want to double check. I haven't heard of that one. So it's the 8 app, ATE, I ate something. Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're a small company, but I absolutely, hands down, I collaborate with them on a lot of my YouTube content. They're phenomenal.
Awesome. Good recommendation. Thank you. So those are all the questions that I have. If anyone has a last minute question or comment, please get that in now. Otherwise, I'll ask Kelsey to spotlight anything you have coming up. I know you mentioned your boot camp. Do you have a preferred method of having people contact you? Where can people reach out and find more information and all of that?
Awesome. So currently, I'm still kind of getting everything up and running, but if you are at all interested in our boot camp, please, it's free and open to everyone. Again, open on the 26th. So just find that on Facebook. If you're at all interested in getting a habits audit from me, if you're just at all interested in learning, just for us to sit down and kind of talk about where you are in your habits right now, and just kind of have let's recognize where you are right now, and I can help you come up with a plan to redesign what's going on or what your environment looks like, and so we can make little small changes. I have a free call. It's just called www.rediscoverycall.com. And you can sign up to do a habits audit with me. And then if you are struggling with binge eating, I do have a free guide. I know none of these make sense as far as the actual website, but my free guide, it's the 5 ultimate steps to eliminate binge eating. And you can find that at www.workwithkelsey.com. But the boot camp will be the biggest one for now. Rediscoverycall.com
and workwithkelsey.com.
You got it.
Well, thanks so much for coming back, and I'd like to have you hang on for a moment after we wrap up here. Just some comments coming in. It's like, thanks so much, Kelsey. That was great.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree. I think you're very much an expert and you have a wonderful way of framing everything. I think that quite often, especially in the health and fitness industry, whether you're going into a gym or something like that, a lot of times it's kind of like, oh, well, can't wait to get you to be what you're not. They really want to focus on getting you to something else, and so I'm really happy to hear you talk about like you mentioned, you're whole, you're beautiful, you're great, you're complete, you're all the things. And, knowing that now let's try and work towards your goals. So I think that's a wonderful place to start. So, and I would have, as I mentioned, a lot of great feedback on the first call that you were on, and I'm really glad to hear you come on again. And I invite you to come back, as I'm sure you're always learning and growing yourself.
Yes, always.
Hi, I'm Shane Borza, a climber, creator, and coach, and I want you to build the skill of health and fitness. My new course is a priceless gift to you, and it's available exclusively on PonoQuest.com. That's PONO Quest.com. Build the Skill is a minimalistic, functional, real-world fitness program which can help you to move better and get stronger faster. I can't wait for you to check it out, and when you do, please let me know how it helps you. That's Build the Skill at PonoQuest.com. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Solve Network. As a reminder, these calls are held live on the first and third Thursday of each month. If you'd like to join us as either a listener or guest expert, please contact me at shaneborza.com. On behalf of my co-founder, Benjamin Goss, we're glad you are a part of the network and hope you are finding solutions. If you need solutions, please reach out.